Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this special interview. Today we have a returning guest to the show, Jim Willie, editor of the Hat Trick Letter, located at goldenjackass.com. That's golden-jackass.com. And I got to tell you, about a month ago, President Trump was a shoo-in for re-election. And I saw it with my own eyes attending one of his rallies. And anybody who was turning on the mainstream media could see it with their own eyes too. But then on election night, all of a sudden it just kind of stopped. And the mainstream media is declaring Joe Biden the victor, but Trump supporters are sure that he's going to be inaugurated here in January. And you know what? I don't even really know what to think anymore. So we need someone like Jim Willie back on the show because he's going to think outside the box. And not only does he think outside the box, but he kicked the box to the curb like it was a box of 2020 ballots. Jim, I'd like to thank you for joining us again on Silver Doctors.
Well, it's good to be back on, Paul. Thank you for that enthusiastic introduction. As a statistician, I look for unique angles to demonstrate the fraud. And let me point one angle out that was very true for the Obama reelection and for the Baby Bush reelection and for the Obama original election, for that matter. It was the exit polls. And this time, notice that the exit polls were really pushed to the side. And that's because there were so many mail-in ballots. And I thought, oh my God, okay, people need to think in these terms if they wish to understand what's going on. The COVID fascist medical coup d'etat at the global Western level. This is a medical fascist state coup d'etat. It has ushered in as one of its corollaries the mail-in vote. You even had on election night the question on the side, a sideline question. What's your biggest factor behind your vote? Is it safety, security from the virus? Or is it the economy? And it was a very well delineated division. The Biden supporters were all about security, and that gave license to the press to say, well, then naturally the mail-in ballots are going to be heavily in favor of Biden. But not 100%. I mean, come on. Okay, so I knew right out of the gate that a very important factor for proving validity of a vote, namely the exit poll, was not going to be important this time, because all you could do this time is to say, well, yeah, it validated the in-person vote at the centers that Trump won. They didn't even need to mess with that, but they did. They did. I've got a few different things that are on my list. Actually, I've got a long list of voter fraud factors. These are not examples. These are not, individual testimony. These are trend factors, like dead people voting. 12,000 dead people voted in Detroit. Now, Mayor Daley of Chicago turned that into a science. I first heard about it, and I giggled about it in 1960. 1960, I was 8 years old, and I watched the Kennedy election. My mother was all excited because a Catholic fellow was possibly going to be a president. And I thought, well, gosh, I can't think of anything so irrelevant. At 8 years of age, I thought, that's kind of irrelevant. What does he want to do as president, Mommy? And she said, I don't know, he's Catholic. Okay, in other words, doesn't matter his agenda, doesn't matter his issues, a Catholic. It's kind of like Obama. Well, he's black, I'm going to vote for him. Or Hillary in the New York Senate. She's a woman. I'm going to vote for her. What are her qualifications? Hillary had no qualifications whatsoever to be in the Senate. Okay, I got a few things. First of all, I mentioned the dead votes. The senators and the House reps, House of Representative, congressmen, congresswomen, they did not, in the blue states, they did not get the same ratio or even close to what Biden got. Biden way outperformed the real people. I'm sorry, I just don't regard Biden as a real person. I'm having trouble whether he's actually in Guantanamo and this is a stand-in. Let's not get into that. Okay, so the blue state votes, apart from the president, were not as strong for them as they were for Biden. Furthermore, just up and down the line at the district level, you had the same phenomenon. Then you had, I think it was 7 states, maybe 11, that had 100% or more voter participation compared to the registered voters. Okay, let's not even get into how the California voters voted in California and then they crossed the line and also voted in Las Vegas. Let's make a vacation out of this, do a little gambling, vote twice, that sort of thing. Here's an interesting one. It's called the Benton Law, or it's called the Benford Law. I've seen it called both, and I don't really know. I'm going to call it the Benton Law. And what they did was they took at various points in time, you know, just think of, say, at 7 minutes after the hour and 7 minutes after the hour and 37 minutes after the hour. Okay, like a systematic sampling there at 7 and 37 minutes after. They grabbed the next to the last Biden and Trump number on votes. Like if it was 12,842, it's a 4. If it's 86,881, it's an 8. The next to the last digit. It should act randomly. But when you're doctoring the vote count and you're altering it and you're doing strange things, it doesn't come out as random looking. And this is a fascinating thing. I remember when I was in graduate school, we had an exercise. And this, I'm telling you, this was fascinating. We were told, run out 100 numbers, you know, 0 to 9, no 10, you know, just single digit. Run out 100 digits from 0 to 9, and we're going to just see if you can produce something random. And, you know, you go ahead and you make your histograms and you see, and you should have 10 or 9 or 8 for every one of the 10 digits. And it's not even close. Not even, you can't fake randomness. Anyway, the Benton Law has disproved the vote counts as being a random flow. It just blew it away. You've got some other things that okay, this is statistical, but you know, you can't say, well, I'm going to apply a statistical test to this. No, it's too blatant. You don't even need to. There were several districts that had intervals of time where nothing came in for Trump. And we're talking about Philadelphia, we're talking about Detroit, we're talking about Chicago. These are your filthy, dirty cities. And what they're doing is they're playing the race card. They're saying, well, you can't dismiss the Philadelphia votes. They're largely black. No. They've decided to throw in the dumping in the black areas that are dominated by historically strong and corrupt Democrat machine apparatchiks. Okay. And I saw a woman get on Fox News. I watched Fox News for 7 consecutive hours and went to sleep assured that my list of states, of the critical states, Texas, Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and Georgia, they all were going for Trump. They all overcame the initial big push from the mail-in ballot. It's like, okay, in the beginning, hour or hour and a half in Pennsylvania, it was 85% Biden. Are you kidding me? How's that? Well, it's the mail-in ballots. All these people who are scared to go outside. Okay, they really relied on that. But anyway, okay, here's another one.
So what you're saying with the first one, though, Jim, is it's almost like if Trump is heads and if you flip a coin 100 times and it only comes up head once, like that's what you're saying.
Yeah, they came in. Okay, I want to get to this whole issue of 1:30 and 2 a.m. Let's leave that as special. when you look at the regular voting until midnight, Trump had to overcome a big head start. And it was all based on the ballots for the mail-in. I don't want to get into the issue of mail-in ballots and whether they're legitimate or not, because that is a very fuzzy area that is going to get sorted out, like watermarks on the federal Department of Homeland Security issued official mail-in and absentee. Oh, golly, it's a huge can of worms. Okay, so you've got all these different factors, and then let's just, okay, these are not statistical things. The Benton Law is statistical. The exit poll is statistical. By the way, I bring up exit poll because in the past, you had a very small, like 2% were absentee ballot, not even. 1.5, 1.6, 1.4, 1.3, whatever. The voter exit poll was the highest correlation I've ever seen in my professional statistical analysis life. It was between 88 and 93% in almost every state, which means that if a district was, say, let's just say 61% Trump, on the exit poll, you could make a science and say, well, we're pretty sure that Trump won by between 57 and 64. That high correlation means very tight predictability. Okay, that's thrown out the window, and you're left with the Benton Law, and you're in a lot of different other things. There's some blatant stuff. In Michigan, there was a third candidate, an independent fellow, and I can't remember his name at this point, but all of his votes were switched to Biden. Oh my God, I just read something today that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled that, yeah, okay, you can have, on the recount, you can have the Republican committee watchers, but they have to be at 30 meters away. I mean, come on. The fraud, I'd like to talk about next, the fraud at the state level. Let me get a sip. A fraud at the state level.
Yeah, because, I mean, you're not going to see anything if you're 30 meters away.
Right, and they closed the curtains in Detroit and Philadelphia, I believe both, or made barriers, or just moved in these 6 foot, 8 foot barriers, partitions, and that's when the we call them Java Majas, okay, the stick drives, the flash drives. In Spanish, they call it the Maya key. The Maya, like the Maya tribe in Cancun, Mexico, Maya, M-A-Y-A. I have no idea why. They call it a Java Maja. It's the Maya key. They don't call it a stick drive. They do call it a portable drive. But anyway, the state level corruption, it's just monumental. It's not a little bit, and you can't characterize it as glitch. You can't characterize it as isolated cases. I got word that last Thursday, which was the 12th, Team Trump had collected 11,000 sworn affidavits for voter fraud in specific manners. What they saw, what they were forced to do, what they managed to hear about, stories, just disgusting things. And if that's the case, in 1 week they got 11,000. We can safely assume they got 15 to 18,000 sworn affidavits now. And an affidavit is like an item that's signed with a statement and a claim that's admissible in court. It's got given a name, a sworn affidavit. Whew, I tell you. Okay, so you got individual states, and let's focus on Michigan, because Michigan and Pennsylvania are a little bit different. They each have, it's important. My father drilled into me, Jim, when it's each, you should say it, each. When it's collective, it's both. Okay, each state, Pennsylvania and Michigan, had their own pressures from the governor. Now, Pennsylvania has a Democrat governor, but it's not as wild and rabid as some of the other Democrat governors. The worst in the United States right now have been Cuomo of New York, Whitmer of Michigan, and Newsom of California. These people need to be very closely examined for treason charges for their behavior all year long on a variety of topics. But what they've done is they set up the election commission and the Secretary of State for their states. I don't like that name. It's the State Secretary of State. Okay, fine. What they've done is they set them all up to be tilted. Make sure that you got your good connections with all the fraudulent votes. Make sure you got your people instructed on how to check off Biden if they have any doubts or if they're mentally not too sharp, and make sure that that third party candidate is removed and you put in Biden, and make sure you've got that rapidly invisibilizing ink from a certain Sharpie type that we can hand to the registered Republicans. All the dirty tricks I've ever heard of and 10 times more have come. So the states have been aligned to make it an organized voter fraud, not isolated. It's systemic. Okay, when you've got, oh gosh, there's a weird guy in Philadelphia suburb, and it's close to Temple University, and it's got a lot of black population there, and this guy's he's gone a little bit rogue. No. You got 80 like that. They're all across these states. So you've got that political party bias and influence. Then you got some other things. I can't leave these out because they're on my list and they're too important to leave out. There's something sacred about the voting machines. They're supposed to be intact, not touched, covered up, and put away in a warehouse for 6 weeks. But there were numerous stories about how a patch was put in the day before, 3 days before, all very illegal, not a gray area impropriety, very directly illegal and improper. And, what were they? I'll get to that shortly. What else is there? Dump City. Oh yeah, the bags. Rudy Giuliani has had a press conference about a week ago, and I found it fascinating. And I was so glad that as private attorney for Donald Trump, along with Sidney Powell, who I thought was a man, but no, I've gotten several videos of her. She's an attack artist from Georgia with a charming accent and everything. When I saw Rudy Giuliani on the case, I thought, great, we got some competence, we got someone with a spine, we got someone who will not back down, and Sidney Powell is the same type. She's just, a different person. Fine. If they got those two, they probably got a few more, and they're working behind the scenes. But those are the ones they put before the television camera. So what did Rudy Giuliani do? Well, he decided he better go to Philadelphia. Well, he didn't just go, marching around and saying, they did a lot of weird things, a lot of improper things in Pennsylvania. He went to something specific that they had videotaped. It was a crematorium. And it's just a mile or so away from the voting center. And they got on video several large bags that went to the crematorium, and they came out empty. And he reasons that somewhere around 200 to 400,000 Trump mail-in ballots were burned. Now, you can't do a GPS and look at the ashes and do all that. You can't, but you can say, we got you moving from the Democrat center, the Democrat operated voting center, because they are the ruling party. And we've got you in movement right next door with our cameras to the crematorium. They were sloppy. And golly, Then you've got the 2 a.m. issue, which finally I choose to talk about. The 2 a.m. issue, because this is when I went to bed. I went to bed at midnight and a little bit later on Mountain Time. So that was 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Pardon me, I got to. I noticed that in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, and in Michigan, Trump overcame the lead and was pulling away. And I thought, wow, what's all that's remaining now is the distant rural districts, the faraway rural, typically red districts. So I'm going to sleep, Trump is pulling away, and all that's left are red districts. The lead can only grow. And this is something I've done every 4 years. It's a phenomenon that does not change. But what they did was they brought about delays in the urban areas. They did something, you referred to it. They just stopped. They just stopped. Why did they stop? Okay, they had plausible explanation that, well, we got an extra day to count the mountain of mail-in votes. Okay, well, I hear you, but don't you have machines to do that? And haven't you started that process 2 weeks ago? Isn't that how you got the original lead for Biden? And didn't that seem to stop between the dinner hour and the midnight hour? So you stopped counting? Why do you need a break after you stopped counting? There's lots of logical things to throw at these people to say you're lying. Okay. So here you got 1 and 2 a.m., give or take, a few different states all of a sudden had a gigantic jump for Biden. And if you look at them, you'd say, well, you know, here comes a big batch. They might be predominantly Biden. No, they were all Biden. They were 100% Biden. There was 120,000 in Pennsylvania and 0 for Trump. In Michigan, it was like 100,000 and 0 for Trump. In Wisconsin, it was something like 85,000 for Biden and 0 for Trump. And you got to think, well, are there really ballots behind that? Or is it just something on a flash drive? And the other question is, what'd you do with all the Trump votes? Because you'd expect that it might be 60% Biden, 40% Trump. No, it was 100% Biden. Okay, these are the statistically impossible. And then they said, well, you know, we brought in the Trump votes from the mail-in at other times. Okay, but seems like you burned them. Okay, you know, and not only that, but I believe it was Michigan that 3 out-of-state plate cars arrived to make the contribution, and they brought in the bags and they brought in the flash drives, and we're led to believe that the flash drive is an exact count on what's in the bags. Okay, yeah, you know, gotta say something, Paul. I've been around computer programming for 40 years, and I did some computer programming when I was doing marketing research in the 1990 decade. And all it was, we called it the data cleaning. And it was rum-dum, simple programming that had almost no logic. Just, well, if it's this, make it that. If it's this, make it that. You know, if it's missing, make it that. And just clean it out so that everything is through 9 or a 99 for unknown. You know, just clean it up so that the computer will then read it and you can get a tabulation and you can begin to work with your analysis, the cleanup. It is so simple. It is something a 9th grader, a 7th grader could do. So when you hear that there are glitches in the programming, it is fraud. It is remarkably simple programming. It is fraud. Now, I've seen some of the programs for the fraud, and we'll get to that in a minute. But if all of these midnight raids took place, there's going to be a real big fight to do the recount and get it done right. And you've got these state-dominated Supreme Court to say, no, we don't see anything wrong. Okay, who appointed you on the court in Ohio? No, not Ohio, in Michigan. Who appointed you on the court, the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania? Who appointed you for the court, the Supreme Court in Wisconsin? And it's the governor. And the pressure is very clear. You will do the following, or we're going to bring you up on charges for things that you can't even imagine, like income tax violations at the state level, like other criminal activity that they can just fabricate. You know, you took a bribe from a guy on a case, but it didn't happen, and they just made it all up. The pressure is enormous on the blue states that are run by the governors. Now, I'm not the kind of person who would say that the red state governors are all squeaky clean. But what we're finding is in the blue states, they're filthy dirty. Okay, so we're going to have some battles here. Now, let's get to the, I saved the best for last, Paul. We got to get to the, the Dominion. I don't know their full system. I looked it up. Oh, gosh, and it brought laughter to my. It brought me laughter. Okay, Skytle. Skytle has a full name. Skytle Secure Electronic Voting, Innovating Democracy. So we got some innovation for
inventing democracy.
Well, yeah, be careful. Talk about innovation. Clever ways to tabulate the data. Remember what I said. Unbelievably simple software. A vote for Trump, add 1. A vote for Biden, add 1. There's no subtracting. Issue on referendum, yes and no, add 1. Unbelievably simple. There's no logic like, okay, we got a situation for a combination here. Now we need to go and attach to a different subroutine and do a calculation for a certain area and certain chemistry and certain test results and bring it on back. No, there's none of that. Okay. So you've got the Dominion, let's just call them the Dominion voting software system, the Dominion systems. First of all, the sales agent was the Clinton Foundation. Second of all, Pelosi and Feinstein are major shareholders. They're Democrat in power, in leading positions. Next, where did all this software originate? Well, in the falsification of the Venezuelan elections to maintain the power for Hugo Chavez. These are basically voter fraud systems. Okay, now, if you look, I have seen just one, and I'm told that there are several. I mean, I've got so many things crossing my desk that if someone says, well, Jim, here's another one. This is from Wisconsin, and you can see the minute by minute. Look at the flipping. I said, well, I've already seen that in Pennsylvania. Okay, I know how it looks. It's minute by minute. What's the count? Minute, minute, minute. And it should never go down. But in many cases, it went down by a certain like 12,346, and the exact amount went up for Biden in that minute. That's called vote fraud, okay? And it's called glaring vote fraud. And when a Supreme Court in a state says, we don't have a problem with that, they are corrupt, and they are inviting impeachment, and they are inviting treason charges at the federal level, and that's what we might see. Okay, so you've got all these minute-by-minute vote switches, and the switching was dominated and operated by the Dominion systems. Okay, now, you've got all this vote flipping, and it's done in aggregate form, and it's also done in individual form. I noticed something when I got a look at the software, that they had a weighting mechanism. I'm going to describe something that's going to sound outrageous, but it's what I believe had been going on. There's a vote for Trump. Okay, We're going to call that 0.7. There's a vote for Biden. Okay, we're going to call that 1.3. You keep adding them up and you round them off. So you don't have something glaring and fraudulent like Trump has 12,346.3 votes. Huh? No, you round it off so that people are none the wiser. There is a weighting factor in the Dominion voting, which means that they can make sure that as it ramps up for Trump, it will slow down in the ramp up. And as Biden tries to catch up, they can amplify his rate of catching up. It's unbelievably obvious and criminal. Okay, these are sort of the things that go on in the Dominion software and the Dominion systems. Two things remain. One is the intranet issue, and the other is the raids. Let me catch my breath a bit here, Paul.
Can I say one thing real quick then, Jim? So
show.
It sounds like, I'm kind of hearing two things going on at the same time, because on the one hand, it sounds like you've got some automated chicanery going on there with a computer system in and of itself, but then there's also like some sort of brute force manual overrides that they can also do at the same time. Does that make sense, Jim?
It does, and what you're referring to is the emergency last measure, that if their original fraud is not sufficient, and I'm going to throw something out there that's going to sound outrageous, but just hear me out. They had a plan that would have worked for Biden if he just got 30% of the vote, but he didn't. So they had to bring in something on an emergency, because even though they altered the vote with the weighting and the flipping and all these different things, it wasn't sufficient. And here you had midnight rolling in, and the whole trend is very clear. You've got most of the mail-in ballots taken care of. So they lied about they had needed more time to count them. And you got the remaining districts are typically outlying and red, as they are every single election for half a century when I've been an adult. So they brought out the emergency hammer. Emergency hammer was, let's shut down the windows, let's shut down the counting process, let's let people go to sleep, and when they wake up, we're going to have a whole different story ready for them, because that's when the midnight came in and the big push came in, and that's where the Java Maja, that's where the flash drives came in with nothing for Trump. And it was, what do we need? Okay, at midnight, they were assessing what do we need at each state to ruin the Trump victory. And by 3 a.m., they had it in place, and we were asleep. I got up in the morning, I almost vomited. I get up at 6 in the morning, every morning. I go to bed early, 10:30. I wake up at 5:36. I stay in bed till the sun rises. I just don't want to get up until the sun rises. It's kind of a thing with me. I immediately turned on the same Fox News, because it's the same people, the same tone. Tucker Carlson was apologizing for the wrong polls, and then he didn't need to apologize anymore, because in the middle of the night, everything turned away from Trump. And I was sick. I was really sick. I thought, well, shit, they're going to have to reverse this. It won't be hard to prove, but it will be hard to execute after displaying the fraud, because you've got Democrat Supreme Courts, Democrat state secretaries of state, Democrat state level election commission officials. You got all these different people, and they are aligned. And then you started hearing the stories, like switching the postal date, pressure to change votes, changing the third party votes, assisting older people in getting their votes and steering, a lot of different things. Okay, so, we've got the finger pointed at Dominion. And Dominion is not going to wiggle out of this, because there were raids. Oh, I didn't get to my main point. The intranet. Okay, there are two words here and concepts. One is internet, T-E-R. The other is intranet, Okay, just think of an intranet as being a private, small network, not open to the public, private and small, as in you're connecting to the other districts in your state, and that's all you're connecting to. By law, the intranet is kept private for just the districts for contributing in the tabulation. All right, District 52 in Scranton, Pennsylvania, dump it in, we're ready, and in they come. Okay, District 54, west of Scranton, bring it in. It's a lot smaller because it's rural. It's intranet. Okay, when I was learning the various things, there was a great evolution in the 70s and 80s and 90s, great evolution. And it was the local area network. Okay, I had a friend who made his own home a local area network. He had an office in the basement, but he had a little port in his living room and he had another port in his bedroom, so he could just connect his PC, connect to the data, and access data from his basement main workstation. That's called an intranet. It wasn't connected to his boss's home 4 miles away. No, it was a home-based intranet. They call it a local area net, LAN, a LAN. Okay, that concept was very powerful and very. At work, we instituted a couple LANs, local area networks, with adjoining departments that were doing work with us. And it wasn't common, but we did that at times. What they did with the Dominion systems, Paul, was outrageously illegal. Not a little bit. They put it on the internet. So a fucking clown in Timbuktu could access it. Unbelievable what they did. Furthermore, they made a data center command and control in Frankfurt, Germany, and in Barcelona, Spain. Team Trump got wind of this. Okay, when you've got your connections and you've made an internet for every state's tabulation, you can see what is the IP address. It's Internet Protocol. What's the IP address? And they found, holy shit, we got a big center in Barcelona and Frankfurt. My firm belief is that they knew exactly where these were located long before November 3rd. I think it was for primaries. Primaries is where some of this was given away. In the primaries, for instance, they made sure that Bernie Sanders did not win. Okay, they were exercising some of their tools back then. So I heard that there was a raid, and I heard a raid on Frankfurt in Germany and a raid on Barcelona in Spain. My first thought, who's in charge? I talked to a couple smart guys and they said, well, Jimmy, you must realize that if there's a raid in Germany, that the US military has no jurisdiction. It would have to be a joint raid with the German military or it would not happen. And I can't imagine that that would happen. And I said, well, give it time. Let's see what happens. Let's see what is unfolding. Let's see what is being revealed. And it wasn't 2 hours later that the story came out. Joint military exercise, US Army Special Forces combining with the German military, and they raided Frankfurt and captured the Dominion servers. Server is a type of computer. It means it's got all these distributed tentacles. And the the tentacles were to the US states. They captured the servers. They captured not just the computers, they captured the data storage. They've got minute by minute data counts on all the states. And that's why you see folks being quoted, we've got all the data. They've got minute by minute on each state. They've got the flipping. They've got the 12,000 up and 12,000 down in the same minute. They got the 18,000 up and down. They got the 8,000 up and down. They got numerous states showing the same flipping going on, including Georgia, which has not gotten the proper smear for its corruption. There's more. When you capture the computers and you capture the data, you get your hands on the algorithms. They are the programs to run things. And this is what I used to write. And I read some of the computer programs and I saw the weighting. It should be 1.0. Each vote is 1. I saw the weighting. I saw the if-thens for vote flipping. And I saw what seemed to be, I don't want to get into a lot of detail because I honestly didn't understand everything and I didn't get a full look. But what I was told is it was an interactive method to determine what did Biden need on some injections of fake votes so that he could take the lead but not take a giant lead. So they had to be interactive and, formula based. And I don't want to get into example, but I can easily produce such software. Again, it is unbelievably simple software, the tabulation. There's no such thing as a glitch. These are way too simple. It's like saying, I got a bunch of oranges and tangerines in the kitchen. I'm going to have my 8-year-old count them. And then you come back later and say, I'm sorry, we had a glitch. How many tangerines are in the pantry? Okay. It's not like they're scattered in various drawers. They're in the bowl. Okay. So we've got the software. We've got the data. We've got the ownership of the company. We've got the fact that it was internet, not intranet, private local. They've got all the data for the fraud. Okay, there's a whole lot more to this. Like a certain fellow in Georgia, I think he's the Secretary of State, was given a bribe to install the Dominion software in his state. Okay, this is again Clinton Foundation bribery. They've already got, who knows, somewhere between 80 and 130 murders, okay? And you need to wake up and think, oh gosh, murder's illegal. They couldn't do that. They did that. His name is Seth Rich. That's just one name. There are dozens and dozens. Paul, they got the goods on these people. And, I think I've laid out a pretty good picture here of the fraud. And believe me, it's just a sketch. There's a whole lot more to this. I've got a couple of other items I didn't even touch on. I don't want to open it up all over again. I hit on a lot of things. I hit on numerous examples. I hit on the Dominion factor. What's left is the big, big question that I've had burning in my head ever since about day 7. I heard the phrase 10 days of darkness by the 17th letter type that could be very quizzical and bring about quick conclusions. The 17th. And I heard that the 10 days of darkness might not be an electromagnetic pulse where everything is down 10 days. It might just be the 10 days required where Team Trump is commissioned, is charged, that's not the right word, has a duty given to collect the fraudulent data because nothing can be presented for 10 days. 10 days of silence. You can talk about fraud, but don't show the data. Don't get the sworn affidavits. Don't bring in the disk drives of minute-by-minute voting tallied. So 10 days was the 13th, Friday the 13th. Golly, who would imagine Friday the 13th? That's when Rudy Giuliani had his press conference in front or next door to the crematorium, mentioning that the cameras were behind him and they got it all on film with men bringing in big bags, okay, to the crematorium. Okay, the 10 days. So I thought, well, here we are, the 14th and 15th. I'm going to kick back a little bit. I'm going to continue with my research toward the November newsletter, which is going to be completely different from any newsletter in the 200. This is month number 200, Paul. 200th issue. We're talking 16 and a half years. As you can see, I'm no longer a young man. I've got the heart of a youngster. I've got the energy of a youngster. What I don't have is the recuperative powers, like for a difficult long day, where, for instance, I might say have 3 or 4 bike rides of a few miles. By the end of the day, I got to make sure I get my salt and water intake, or take a Gatorade or Powerade so I don't get cramps. But my recuperative powers are not quite what they used to be, but I'm still strong as a small ox. The burning question that I had is, where do they present the fraudulent data? And does it have to be in summary form? Where do you present, like the 15,000, this is my estimate, 15 to 20,000 sworn affidavits? Where do you organize that into type of fraud, or do you just organize it state by state? Okay, where do you present it? And that brought up the questions. Tough questions, Paul. It was Monday the 9th that I heard the Federal Election Commission made a declaration, did not get MSM press coverage. The Federal Election Commission declared the vote invalid. Why is that not on the news?
Yeah.
Okay, now they do not have the authority to say we are therefore making the election null and void. They are saying that according to our analysis, it is an invalid vote. It's like, okay, you got an opinion over there. Thank you for your opinion. Now we will proceed in the proper channels, because the Federal Election Commission does not have full power. They don't preside over the whole thing and say, well, you know, we're going to declare Michigan for Trump. We're going to declare Georgia for Trump because we're the Federal Election Commission. No. Those are state decisions. You ask Michigan, who won your state? And if it's a corrupt state with corrupt governor and corrupt officials, you got a problem. You got a big problem. And that's why we've had now, how many days? We got 15 days with nothing declared, certified, done, finished, kaput. Nothing is wrapped up with a bow on it. First time in my adult life that we don't know even 24 hours later. I remember when Kennedy versus Nixon in 60, I remember that. I remember going to bed kind of early, you know, like 9:45 and 10 o'clock, like a little kid would do. And I got up in the morning and I said, Daddy, who won? And they said, it's just been revealed that Kennedy won. It was very close and Illinois was important, but there's a controversy. And I thought, okay, all right, great. I'll read about it later. And I went off to school, okay? Little Jimmy, 8 years old, 3rd grade, okay? So, where do you present the data? You can go on for an hour on the answer. Where do you present the data? Paul, this is enormously complex. Here's what I've come to learn. You present the data to the state officials, and you hope that they are honest, which they are not. All the emphasis is on these battleground states, which are majority with a Democrat blue governor, a majority of them. North Carolina is off the radar now. They've certified it. They probably had some fraud, but despite the fraud, and this was my prediction a week ago, and I mean, a week before the election, Trump is going to win by such a margin that it won't matter certain battleground states. And that was where we were heading. But they did the emergency measure, calculating what they need, and do the 2 a.m. dump. So back to the question, where do you present it? It's to the the Secretary of State and the election official for the state, and they combine this presentation and act like the defendant to the Trump charges, the plaintiff. The way to remember these terms is the person who complains is the plaintiff. The person who's charged must defend himself or herself, the defendant. and you present it to the state Supreme Court, which has got loads of influence from the governor who did appointments. They got friends. So the state Supreme Court makes a decision. And if they don't do the right thing, you've got other problems. Where does the decision lie for declaring a vote invalid? It's the state Supreme Court. What do you do then? You have a recount where you can sift out the fraudulent votes. It's not that simple, even to that level. Who has the power for the Electoral College votes? Pennsylvania has 20, which means they have 18 representatives in the House and 2 senators, total of 20. Texas has 38, 36 House members and 2 senators. California has 55, 53 House members and 2 senators. And then it gets, to the little slim states. Montana, although big state, big land mass, 3 electoral because they have 1 representative in the House and 2 senators. You get the idea. Who has the power to make the assignment of the people who go and serve on the function of the Electoral College? It's the state legislature, not the Supreme Court, not the Secretary of State, not the governor. So it's the legislatures. And then who has the power to speak for them? It's the Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House in Pennsylvania is on record saying they will not certify the Pennsylvania vote unless there's a recount. So you've got a battle between the legislature in Pennsylvania and the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania. This is chaos.
And then you got all those burned ballots in the crematorium.
And you've got, I don't know how they're going to handle that, Paul, but let's just put that aside. It's a big red herring. Okay, now I have mentioned the standard conventional, if you will, civil routes. Okay, let's suppose that we've got very good indications based on internal words, captured emails, monitored phone conversations, that the deep state has influenced the Supreme Court of the United States, and they've turned a couple of the conservative justices with threats and bribery, threats of murder, threats of, false charges coming up, planting cocaine in their cars. It's so easy.